it still feels really, really weird and uncomfortable to be talking every week about anything other than what's going on in Gaza. But there isn't really anything new to say. The genocide continues, the brutal slaughters continue. The thing that sounds the most inhumane, the most awful, terrible thing that you can imagine, that's what's happening, that's what's going on with, the support of the UK government and the UK military. So I'm just going to acknowledge that we are having this conversation in the middle of a genocide that is wrong, and whatever we can do to stop it, we should do. Now let's talk about what I want to talk about this week. At the same time, Rishi Sunak has announced that the UK government is going to ban sex education for the under nines. And this is absolutely terrifying for a number of reasons. First of all, because young people, guess what? They ask questions. Of course they do. And they ask questions about their bodies because it's right there. And what a crazy, screwed up world we are building if teachers are no longer allowed to answer children's straightforward questions about, like, what does this do? Why is this happening? Why does this feel like this? Like these are simple questions, and children have every right to know the truth about their own bodies. Secondly, the best time to teach children the basics about anatomy and sex and this kind of stuff. And of course, we're talking about the function and the biological practicality of it. We're not talking about, showing them a stream of, what the best positions are or whatever. The best time to do that is before they hit puberty, because once they hit puberty, they've got hormones rushing around their body and they get embarrassed about these things because, they fancy people and they've got little crushes on people. And at that stage, it becomes difficult to talk to kids about these things. They're less inclined to listen. The best time to start talking to the kids about these things is when they're young enough to not be embarrassed because they're not riddled with hormones. Thirdly, if we don't explain to children the basics of sex and intimacy, then how are we going to tell children to report when something inappropriate is happening to them? And I wish we didn't live in a world where that was necessary, but the fact is we do, and we always have done. There has never been a time in history where there hasn't been an issue of young people being sexually abused, groomed, all that kind of stuff. We have to be able to say to young people, if these things are happening to you, that's not okay, and you can come and tell someone and you won't be in trouble. And it's so, so, so important. It's also the case that this won't stop young people finding out about sex. The average age at which young people see online pornography for the first time, I'm told, is about 11. So how far do you think we are stemming the tide here? If we don't teach them clear, simple, important stuff, they are going to learn this stuff from other sources. And those other sources are not sources that we can rely on to provide good, balanced information that encourages respectful behaviour and all the rest, right? And I understand that there's controversy about what is taught. Of course there is. These are, highly emotive things, and there will always be controversy about what is taught. In particular, there's a controversy around how we teach about gender and people who are transgender, and how can we teach about that without creating a situation in which we reinforce gender stereotypes. But in fact, we want to be saying to kids that these things don't matter and that you can do whatever you want and you're not tied to what's considered correct for your gender. And I understand that there's got to be a conversation about that, but that conversation has to happen between teachers and parents and children and experts in those areas, not between Rishi Sunak being bullied by religious lobbyists and gradually pushing this country back into some sort of Puritan era. And it was a struggle to get out of that era. We fought back so hard against religious control of our lives in the UK and around the world. And we're still having that fight. We still have churches that don't pay tax on their income. We still have religious organisations running schools, running all kinds of services that you might need access to, like homeless shelters, like drug rehabilitation centres, these kind of things. We still have people pushing religion on us across the board. These days, apparently, Russell Brand is on the list. The truth of the matter is that these fundamental religious groups are receiving huge amounts of funding from evangelical churches in the US and organisations like that. And we need to resist it as hard as we possibly can, because young people have a right to know about their bodies and to know about the basics of biology. And we shouldn't be afraid of that, because it's healthy to understand these things. And it means that when you do get old enough to start having relationships and flirting with people and all those things, you're armed with information that you understand properly. And it gives you the opportunity to learn as well how to be respectful and how to be careful in doing these things. And we could build such a better society, but what we need, and what we've needed for a long time in terms of sex education, is more, a lot more, and definitely not less. See you next week. Increasingly, the mainstream media is terrible at informing the public of what is really going on. I'm only able to make these videos because people are generous enough to sponsor me making them, and if you're able to be a part of that, I would hugely appreciate it. It can cost as little as $1 a month, and you'll get loads of fun bonus content and lots of extras from me and my undying gratitude. I also massively appreciate it if you're able to like, share these videos and let people out there know what's going on.